We will proceed with the Lincoln-Douglas debate. Style for the topic: Will India surpass China? Featuring Karl Marx and Benjamin Franklin. This style, focusing on values and philosophy, will allow for a deep and thoughtful exploration of the topic. Before we begin, let's set the stage. 1. Opening statements. Each participant will provide an opening statement presenting their core arguments. 2. Cross-examination. After each opening statement, there will be a brief period where the other participant can ask questions. 3. Rebuttals. Each participant will have the opportunity to directly address and rebut the arguments of their opponent. 4. Closing statements. Finally, each participant will summarize their arguments and make their final case. As the debate progresses, I will ensure that the arguments are free from logical fallacies and cognitive biases, and I will provide feedback as necessary to maintain a fair and balanced debate. Let's start with the opening statement from Karl Marx.
Opening statement. Karl Marx is Karl Marx. I would argue that India has the potential to surpass China, but this hinges on how it navigates the complexities of capitalist development and addresses the class struggles inherent in this process. The key to India's ascendance lies in its vast labor force and the potential for a revolutionary transformation of its socio-economic structures. Unlike China, which has embraced state-led capitalism to an extensive degree, India has the opportunity to forge a path that more directly empowers its working class. The real question is not whether India can surpass China in mere economic metrics, but whether it can chart a course towards development that avoids the pitfalls of extreme inequality and environmental degradation that often accompany rapid capitalist expansion.
Cross-examination. Benjamin Franklin. As Benjamin Franklin, I would inquire about the practicality of Marx's vision for India. Franklin, with his pragmatic approach, might question how Marx's theory of class struggle and revolutionary change aligns with the current global economic system. He might ask, Mr. Marx, how do you propose India balance the needs of its vast population with the environmental and social challenges of rapid industrialization, especially within the existing global capitalist framework?
Professor's interjection. Both debaters have presented intriguing points. Marx's focus is on socio-economic transformation, while Franklin's perspective is rooted in pragmatism and adaptation within the existing system. As we move to Marx's response to Franklin's cross-examination, let's ensure the argument stays focused on the feasibility of India's potential to surpass China, considering both economic and social dimensions. Karl Marx, please respond to Benjamin Franklin's inquiry.
Response from Karl Marx in response to Benjamin Franklin's pragmatic concerns. I, as Karl Marx, would emphasize that the feasibility of India's ascent is not merely an economic question, but a socio-political one. The challenge for India lies in navigating the contradictions of capitalism more effectively than China. This means prioritizing equitable distribution of wealth and ensuring that industrialization does not come at the expense of the environment or the working class. India's unique position in the global economic system, with its vast democratic base, allows for a more balanced approach to development, one that could potentially serve as a model for a new form of socio-economic progress, different from both Western capitalism and Chinese state-led capitalism.
Rebuttal. Benjamin Franklin. As Benjamin Franklin, I would argue that while Marx's vision is noble, the practicalities of achieving such a balance are formidable. Franklin, proponent of practical wisdom and innovation, might suggest that India's path to surpassing China should focus on leveraging its strengths in technology, democratic institutions, and entrepreneurial spirit. He would likely emphasize the importance of pragmatic policies that foster economic growth, technological advancement, and international cooperation rather than a radical overhaul of the socio-economic system. Mr. Marx, isn't it more realistic for India to utilize its current democratic and capitalist structures to innovate and grow, rather than seeking a revolutionary socio-economic transformation?
Professor's commentary. Both Marx and Franklin present compelling arguments. Marx focuses on a transformative approach, emphasizing equitable and sustainable development, while Franklin advocates for leveraging existing structures for pragmatic, incremental progress. As we move to Marx's response, it's important to consider how these differing ideologies might practically apply to India's unique context. Marx, your response to Franklin's point about leveraging existing structures for India's growth, please.
Response from Karl Marx responding to Benjamin Franklin's emphasis on leveraging existing structures. I, as Karl Marx, would argue that while India's democratic and capitalist frameworks have their strengths, they also perpetuate systemic inequalities. True progress, in my view, requires addressing these fundamental disparities. India's current capitalist structure, much like what we've seen in Western countries, leads to wealth concentration and environmental degrade. The path to surpassing China, therefore, isn't through uncritical adoption of these models, but through a revolutionary approach. Thatcher defines the relationship between capital, labor, and the state. This doesn't necessarily mean discarding all aspects of the current system, but it does involve a critical reevaluation of how economic and political power is distributed and exercised.
Second rebuttal. Benjamin Franklin. As Benjamin Franklin, I would acknowledge Marx's concerns about inequality and environmental issues, but argue that revolutionary changes often bring unforeseen complications and instabilities. A more prudent approach would be to improve and reform existing structures by focusing on education, technological innovation, and political reforms to reduce corruption and increase efficiency. India can achieve sustainable growth. It's about finding a balance between economic development and social responsibility, leveraging the strengths of the capitalist system while mitigating its weaknesses. Mr. Marx, don't you think that gradual reforms within the existing system could be a more stable and effective path for India to not only grow economically, but also address the social and environmental issues you're concerned about?
Professor's commentary. Both participants have now delved deeper into their ideologies. Marx calls for a radical redefinition of socio-economic structures, while Franklin advocates for pragmatic reform within the existing system. As we move towards the closing statements, it will be important for each to encapsulate their argument's essence and address how their proposed strategies could realistically be implemented in the context of India's quest to surpass China. Let's hear the closing statements, starting with Karl Marx.
Closing statement. Karl Marx. In concluding, I, as Karl Marx, maintain that for India to truly surpass China, it must not only achieve economic growth, but also address the inherent flaws of capitalist development. This means fostering a society where wealth and resources are distributed more equitably, and where economic progress does not come at the cost of environmental sustainability or social justice. India's unique demographic and democratic attributes provide a fertile ground for a new kind of socio-economic model, one that could potentially lead the world towards a more equitable and sustainable future. The key is not incremental reform but a bold reimagining of the relationship between the economy, society, and the environment.
Closing statement. Benjamin Franklin. In my final remarks, as Benjamin Franklin, I would emphasize that while aspirations for a more equitable society are commendable, the path to surpassing China lies in pragmatic adaptation and innovation within the existing system. India's strength lies in its democracy, entrepreneurial spirit, and technological prowess. By enhancing these aspects through education, reform, and international cooperation, India can achieve sustainable growth and social progress. It is through pragmatic, incremental changes, not radical overhauls, that India can best navigate the challenges of the 21st century and position itself as a global leader.
Professor's summary and decision. This debate has presented to contrasting but thought-provoking viewpoints on India's potential to surpass China. Karl Marx advocated for a revolutionary redefinition of socio-economic structures, focusing on equitable distribution and sustainability. Benjamin Franklin, on the other hand, argued for pragmatic reforms within the existing capitalist and democratic frameworks, emphasizing innovation and gradual progress. Both participants presented strong arguments, supported by logical reasoning. Marx's argument was visionary but faced challenges in terms of practical implementation and potential for instability. Franklin's approach was pragmatic and seemingly more attainable, but it might not address the systemic inequalities and environmental issues as radically as Marx proposed. In considering both the depth of the arguments and their practical implications, I find Benjamin Franklin's stance slightly more compelling in the context of the current global and Indian economic scenario. His emphasis on leveraging existing structures and focusing on pragmatic, incremental progress seems more feasible and stable for India's ambition to surpass China. However, it's important to note that both perspectives offer valuable insights, and that the ideal path for India might well involve a blend of these ideologies, leveraging existing strengths while also being open to transformative changes where necessary. Thank you both for a stimulating and insightful debate. Join the debate, shape your thoughts, subscribe now.